Some of you will remember Richie from Bilbao, where he gave the talk that still stuck in my head, that said, happiness is a choice. And if you look at the way the brain works, that is actually true. That your brain works to make happiness a choice, and therefore a reality. And so to continue with this, I think I said yesterday, blow our minds, Richie Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. Do you know that you are alive after you are dead? Do you know that we are born to be kind? That flourishing is easier than you think? And that well-being is contagious? These are a few of the insights that I'll share with you in the next 14 minutes. So the story begins in 2001. This is a picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama visiting our lab, learning how we can interrogate the structure and function of the human brain non-invasively using MRI. These were the early days. Today, we're seeing all kinds of things that were unimaginable. And I want to spend a few moments talking about the magic and the mystery of the ordinary. This is a paper that just appeared very recently in a very prestigious journal, and it involved the analysis of 1 cubic millimeter of the human brain that was actually removed from a patient who is suffering from epilepsy. And this was a pre-surgical procedure to identify parts of the brain that may be affected. 1 cubic millimeter was removed, and using an electron microscope, it was sliced into nanoslices, and it filled more than 1 petabyte of data. Some of you may not know what a petabyte is. It's 1,000 terabytes. The average disk drive on a laptop is a few terabytes. This is more than 1,000 terabytes of 1 cubic millimeter. And this is what we see when we look at the brain. These are beautiful neurons, and they're neurons that were identified. 57,000 neurons to be exact in this 1 cubic millimeter, and more than 150 million synapses. This is the engine of plasticity. We're forming synapses all the time. Can you feel the synaptogenesis from the Hearth Summit? Our brains are being changed right now. And this is the engine of that change. We're born to be kind. And that may seem strange and inconsistent with what we're seeing around the world today. But if you look at a human infant prior to a lot of conditioning, what you see is that we come into the world with a propensity for kindness. How do we know that? I want to show you 2 very short videos that were shown to 6-month-old babies. This is the first one. Maybe these are not playing. Here we go. Actually, this is the second one. Let's see if I can go back and show you the first one. Okay. Okay, that's video 1, and here's video 2. Which of these do you think 6-month-old babies prefer? Of course, you should be asking the question, how do you know what a 6-month-old baby prefers? Well, scientists can be very clever about this, and one of the ways we know is we can actually track their eye movements and see how long they're looking at each one. We can also monitor their smiles. And it's not like 55% of infants prefer the first one, but 100% of infants prefer the first one. We come into the world with a propensity for pro-social behavior. That is our nature. When we engage in simple forms of meditation to cultivate well-being and kindness and warm-heartedness and compassion, we are actually familiarizing ourselves with the very nature of our own hearts and minds. This is who we are as human beings. I want to move on to another topic, which is the brain-gut connection. There are approximately 500 million neurons in our gut, in the average adult human. 500 million neurons. We're not wired this way for no reason. There is bidirectional communication that's constantly happening between the brain and the body, and particularly the gut. Our demeanor, our moods, our well-being affects our physiology. And our physiology in our body is constantly modulating our brain. I was talking to someone yesterday here who's doing a workshop on food. I forget who you are, but you were beautiful. And you're welcome. And our food is modulating our brain constantly through this interaction. And what we found is that 5 minutes a day of a meditation-based well-being training program modulates our microbiome, changes the composition of our gut. 5 minutes a day for 28 days. That's pretty extraordinary. And one of the things that it does is it impacts the butyrate pathway in our gut. Probably very few of you know what the butyrate pathway is. How many of you know what the butyrate pathway is? Anyone? Okay, not many. The butyrate pathway seals the lining of our gut. And what we found is that 5 minutes a day of meditation-based well-being training affects this butyrate pathway, resulting in a better sealing of the gut to minimize leaky gut syndrome and all kinds of inflammatory processes. This is how our well-being gets under our skin and affects our biology in ways that are consequential for our health. It's easier than you think. This is a hugely important message. Using a program that we've developed called the Healthy Minds Program. You can learn more about it by checking this out. It's freely available throughout the world. Using this program for 5 minutes a day, we find that public school teachers who are incredibly stressed in the United States, and we've also done this work in Mexico, show dramatic improvements in their well-being and reductions in psychological distress. This shows evidence from 2 samples. And the red line is the group who are randomly assigned to doing this meditation-based well-being training that we call HMP, which is our Healthy Minds program. And these participants are showing these dramatic reductions that persist over time. And the amazing thing is, in these school teachers, when we look at the students, who are taught by teachers randomly assigned to the well-being training, and we compare them to students who are taught by teachers randomly assigned to a control condition, the students actually do better. Well-being is contagious. This is from a sample of more than 12,000 students, and it's showing data from standardized tests of language and math ability. The students had no idea that the teachers were involved in any kind of research, any kind of well-being training. And yet, the impact is dramatic and clear. Teachers who show up and are fully present, are connected, have a sense of purpose, are more effective in teaching their students. Not surprising, but important to know. I want to take you a little bit now into the future. Our brains are engines of plasticity. Sometimes we need a little nudge to help our brains recalibrate, resynchronize. And one of the domains where this is particularly important is sleep. Sleep is something that underlies our well-being. And there are strategies now for the non-invasive stimulation of certain kinds of oscillations in the brain that can actually facilitate sleep. We don't have time to go into technical details here, but this is super cool stuff. Because this method of transcranial electric stimulation with temporal interference, I know it's a mouthful, we call it TESTI, you can't even feel it. It's not, they don't produce any sensations. And we can deliver it to people when they're sleeping. And it stimulates a particular kind of oscillation that's really important for sleep. This is slow wave activity. It's the engine of our deep sleep. And stimulating a few times a night, twice a week, produces dramatic changes in the brain. People can't feel it when they're sleeping, and it improves their mood, their emotions, their emotion regulation, and their well-being during the day. And it's completely non-invasive. There are no side effects. And it is, in principle, very inexpensive and easy to administer. It can be self-administered. Not everyone needs this. This is just showing some very new data that hasn't yet been published, showing that we can improve slow-wave sleep using this simple strategy. There are other ways of stimulating these neural oscillations, and one of the ways is music. We've all been treated to amazing performances here and singing. And music and sound has been found to also entrain brain oscillations in ways that can be salubrious for our well-being. This is a Wild West so far of scientific exploration, but it remains to be mined, and it shows tremendous promise. So I want to end now with a little bit on the farther reaches of human possibility. I started by making the claim that we are alive after we are dead. The Dalai Lama asked me about 10 years ago to please study Tukdam. Tukdam is a state that practitioners in the Buddhist tradition, and likely in many other traditions, go into when they die. And it occurs after the heart stops, after breathing ends, and we've actually tried to measure brain electrical activity. and we see a flat line. And yet these practitioners look fresh. They often die in a meditation posture and remain seated. They often smell beautiful. Their bodies don't decompose. And in fact, we just published a paper with this large international team showing the lack of decomposition of the body in these practitioners. This is someone who has been dead for 8 days, remaining in a meditative posture. And Tai Situ Rinpoche, who is the one who is reciting prayers, is sending this consciousness on its way. And this is another practitioner. This photograph was taken 4 days after death, according to Western criteria for death, and his body is completely fresh, the skin is supple, and he looks totally alive. This just underscores how little we know. This is an exercise in humility. Let me end by sharing with you a very important quote from me. This was written by Nelson Mandela when he was on Robben Island, and he said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." Thank you very much. Thank you.